Welcome to Let's Define Some Terms, thinking and talking about content layout. I've been modeling this idea for a couple of years. Each time I've presented the material in small groups, it's helped immensely to drive stakeholder conversations away from being centered around pages to being about content structure that we as developers can actually use. So product owners, designers, project managers, themers, site builders, and full stack developers will benefit from this talk. My name is James Camden. I'm a former low voltage electrician turned web developer. That's just a fancy way of saying I was a cable guy. I'm full stack with training in graphic design and multimedia, and I'm self-taught in back-end programming and DevOps. For the last decade, I've been involved in every aspect of the web development cycle, from discovery through delivery and maintenance. I'm big on automation and what I've termed every user experience, from product owners to developers to consumers. My advice: automate your CI build as part of your first steps to initiate a project, including pull request builds for QA. Your product owners will love you. Also, commit a local development environment that fully supports front-end builds, debugging, code standards, tools, etc. For more, follow me over on dev.to. It's kind of like medium.com for developers. Ignore, another note, ignore vendored and other composer-generated scaffolding and contrib modules. Make developer experience a priority so that they can quickly onboard and then themselves make UX a priority. All right, that's just my little spiel and kind of my soapbox. Enough of that. Before we move on, let me mention my employer and silver sponsor for Drupal Camp Chattanooga, ITCon Services. We're a digital services provider supporting some of the federal government's mission-enabling websites. Since 2012, we've supported 21 Drupal sites, including development, enhancement, redesign, upgrades, and migration. For agencies such as the USDA, Congressional Budget Office, AmeriCorps, the US House of Reps, and more. And big announcement, we're hiring. So please stop by our virtual booth for more information. Okay, so today we'll cover ground in kind of the following order. To kick things off, the first portion of this talk is actually meant to be part of a pre-discovery kickoff where stakeholders should attend. The idea is that we preload the project discussion with a set of useful terms. Next, we'll kind of re-review these concepts with kind of a site building, theming, and development mindset. We'll explore multiple avenues to accomplish these end goals, but not dive too deep into detail on implementation. You could probably see Drupal recipes for that. Shout out to Bob and the guys. Lastly, the nature of our implementation will actually reveal some shortcomings in the contrib landscape. I hope to encourage us to explore ways we can collaborate and contribute back to the community to deal with these holes. I have a lot to go through, so please, if you have questions, write them down, put them in the chat, and we will explore them at the end, okay? Credit to whom credit is due. My concept here is what I've termed the categories of content type. It actually builds on two prior concepts. First, Brad Frost's atomic design principles, a design concept useful for building apps. Designers, if you're here, go get this book. And as my friend Lee says, learn to use the tool. Often I've seen designers that they like atomic design, but they haven't adopted it into their design methodology. Most modern design tools have adopted atomic design into their DNA, so use it. Actually can sort of show off is not showing the site, it is showing the site. It's being a little slow now. And looks like it is not showing a great portion of the screen for this. So I apologize, you're kind of missing out, but I'm showing off a little bit of what Figma can do and how I've used it to build components that are based off of other components. So right here, I've got an image component. So if I take this component and modify it in some way, it will affect its use across all the other design components for the design. So we can talk more about that later. Let's move on for now. But yeah, as far as modern design tools, like I said, Figma is one of my favorites, but Adobe XD supports this, and so does Sketch. So second, it builds on a former colleague of mine, Tyrell Bloomfield's UX triage. He conceptualized how to collect important architectural and functional aspects of an application in something he called See-Do. So if you want more information on that, definitely go check out each of their write-ups on those topics. So without further ado, we are going to now start what I consider to be the pre-discovery, pre-kickoff training. Often when we get into discovery with you as a stakeholder, early on, we involve web solutions architects and designers, and their job is to understand your business and functional requirements and your design needs. To collect that into a discovery document that ends up being the deliverable. So let me just check something here. Their job, so for a web-driven content publishing platform, this means talking about how to structure content. And often in these stakeholder conversations, the conversation centers around pages and the content on those pages. Like, okay, let's talk about the homepage and let's talk about us. How about frequently asked questions, maybe news and events, products, services, etc. This focus on pages can take away from a very, very key issue. The question is, how do we structure and foster ongoing content changes to your site? After all, we are talking about a content management system. How do we give content editors the ability to creatively and effectively produce new content, drive traffic, and not have to rely on designers or developers each time they want to do something? Also, how do we keep them from diverging from a design standard and brand style guide, but still make it flexible enough to actually be creative? To kick things off, we're going to make a page layout. We'll start with a header. Often a header is made up of components such as a logo, main navigation, maybe with some submenus, a search field, and let's throw in a user account menu. We place this set of components at the top of a page and call it a header. But what is a header? So let me introduce you to the concept of atomic design. In atomic design, we break things down to their smallest unit. Let's take that search component, for example. You might have a search field where a user can type maybe a label, maybe a button, magnifying glass, and there you go. You've pretty much built a search field. It could look different. Designers can do all kinds of great things. They scratch out the logo. They even scratch the button. And so you have a placeholder text here. And that's it. A person hits enter to conduct search. Now, I don't know about the usability of these kinds of things and whether they're particularly great for accessibility, but what I'm covering here is that you have the search component as a whole, and it can be made up of, or is made up of, different components, different atoms. So you have the label, the text field, the button, the placeholder, and well, yeah, that's pretty much it. So what you end up with is you have atoms, and several atoms put together form a molecule. This is atomic design. Each of those things that make up the search component are atoms. I've kind of already said this, but the combination of atoms into this search component is a molecule. And from there, it grows, and you have the combination of atoms and molecules forming a header and you have an organism. From there, you can take this concept and grow it out into templates. And finally, from your designer, you'll get full-fledged page designs with images and content. So atoms form the basis of everything in your design. Now, I want to introduce you to this concept of categories of content types, a way to think about structuring the templates and components that make up your architecture. First, a convention. Since we'll be talking about the main content of a site going forward, we'll just assume a common header and footer from here on out. So we'll just be dealing with whatever falls in between. So, first category. Let's get it out of the way. Basic pages. Basic content types should be reserved, I'm going to put this out there, for wall of text type pages. Things like your privacy policy or your terms and conditions. It'll have a title, maybe a header, some paragraph, another header, some paragraph, etc., and on down the page it goes. Typically, these are handled with a WYSIWYG editor. I recommend heavily limiting what content editors may do in this what you see is what you get editor. But the idea is that basic content types may actually be, I'm sorry, let me cover this, that you can take a basic content type and expand it a little bit further if you want for usability reasons. You can make it more than just a simple WYSIWYG, say with explanatory side text. Let's say you have a really a lot of jargon in your and legalese in your privacy policy. So you got headers with paragraphs, so you got another header with paragraphs. It'd be cool if you had simplified explanatory text over there on the side, right? So that might be another way to provide a basic content type. For those familiar with Drupal's basic page content type, let me say this. Basic should not be used for landing pages. That's my opinion. I'm curious if others share that opinion. Would be interested in talking about that further. I can tell at this point you probably want an alternative. You want to talk about landing pages. We'll get to that. First, let's talk about structured content types. This is our second category. These would best be used for something like an event, a blog article, a recipe, a job posting, a product. The idea is that it's something where the content has specific fields that it collects and displays. What you see and do. So, for example, an article probably has a featured image at the top. Remember, the header and footer are up here and down here. You might have a title, the publish date, maybe a little blob thing over here with an image of the author and their name, maybe even a small bio and a read more link. Then you might have a WYSIWYG where they can add in bits, but that is the idea. You have individual fields, image, associated author, which by the way, I don't recommend using the author field for this. I would actually make this related to maybe a team member content type. And the reason being, there might have been others involved in actually writing this and inserting it into the content editor that weren't necessarily the author. So you can list multiple authors. The publish date, the title, and the body, right? Several different fields that are collected for this structured content type. Same kind of thing with an event. An event might have a featured image and the start, end time, location, and maybe a little descriptive bit. Maybe who's going to be speaking at the event, and maybe even a list of attendees. I don't know, something like that. Your designer can work that out with you. But the idea here is that structured content, again, has a set of fields that it collects and displays. And it's really important that an architect gathers and defines what a user will see and do while interacting with this content type. Because of the nature of content types of this category, all display modes of this content are typically identical. An article, whether you're looking at the canonical page, also called a full display mode or default display mode. You might also have a teaser. So a teaser might have that featured image with the title and maybe some introductory text with a read more link. You might actually have it as a card where the card has, how about the taxonomy term tag, the title, and some text with a read more link. So these are different display modes for article. Every time you look at an article somewhere on the site, it will always look like one of these, and you can create as many of them as you like. What are display modes? I kind of covered that. Additionally, we can actually create block-only structured content types. What are some examples of this? Let's say you had given the ability for content editor to create this kind of 3-card layout where they supply 3 images, 3 titles, maybe some text, I don't know, might not even be necessary to have that. And maybe, so 3 images, 3 messages, and a call to action. So this is a kind of like a block only really good example of this actually that you'll see on I'm giving away some things here, but on Lullabot's articles that deal with the layout builder, they kind of walk you through what they did for the layout builder. Really good stuff. They have a quote block only content type, and you won't find a default or canonical page for quotes, but the quote does collect specific fields. You got the quote itself and the author. And so this will be placed usually on some page and as active content, typically as a one-off. By the way, the mention, okay, so there's one other cool thing can be done when it comes to display modes, and that is that you can actually insert display modes of structured content within other content, within other structured content. Let me show you what I mean. Let's say we were writing an article. You got your featured image, you got the title, the thing, the author, blah, blah, blah. And you're writing along and you have a case study. Well, that case study is structured content itself. And so it might have a featured image and some information, and I'll read more. And you can actually insert that as a display mode in the WYSIWYG using, I believe it's called, I've forgotten the name of the module. Somebody could probably point it out in the chat for me. But the idea is you can insert that along with maybe another one that points to a team member who was involved in that case study. And so their team member display mode is right there alongside the content, alongside the body for that structured article page. So pretty cool things what you can do when it comes to, placing content of a specific structure out there for content editors to use and place. By the way, this brings up an interesting problem that should be addressed during discovery. What do we do with the What do you do with expired content? What do I mean? Well, let's say this team member or this team member goes away. How do we manipulate the display mode when the status of a team member is they no longer work here? Do we display, do we still display their name and image? Do we display no longer works here? Do we display, do we continue to display them as they are? And then when you just go to their canonical page, it lets you know that they no longer work here, or something to that effect. I don't know what the answer is, but it's something to discuss. You got to put that out on the table. How do we deal with expired content? How should the display modes for expired content be affected? Just throwing that out there. All right, so earlier you wanted an alternative to basic pages for landing pages. Typically, okay, so let me introduce you to the third category. It is unstructured content. Unstructured content. Typically, this is something that is wall-to-wall layers of, let's say, cards, blocks, images, content, etc. It's meant to drive visitors elsewhere or elicit an action by the visitor or provide information. This is basically unstructured to me equals landing page. You might recall, by the way, that we just defined several structured content display modes as blocks and even provided block-only structured content types. Those can all be inserted here. On the fly, creating, here's image and some message bits and maybe a call to action button. Or this might be a list of articles. Or you might have the list of articles down here. So it could be directly related to article content or created just for this landing pages on the fly. By the way, did you notice something about our unstructured page that it didn't have a title? Remember, we're dealing with everything below and above the header and footer. Well, we could provide maybe a title block, H1 kind of title thing that somebody could insert at the top of pages that need a title. I really don't like that. Someone could place it in the wrong order, or worse, have multiple H1s strewn all about the place. Also, what about search results or teasers? What if I want this landing page to appear as a teaser with maybe a title, image, and some text in search results? So how do I make a display mode for completely unstructured content? Remember, our goal is to allow flexibility, but restrict content authors from going out of bounds with things like multiple H1 tags. For this, we want a hybrid. That is the fourth category of content types. It's unstructured content with structured display modes. So you will have a title field, maybe even a description field. And then from there, you might even have a featured image. And then from there, the page is pretty much all unstructured. And so while you might collect these fields, the title, the body, or the message or description or whatever it is about this page that might show up in a teaser or a card or somewhere else, and a featured image, you might display that for the canonical page with, maybe the featured image, a title, and then everything below that is unstructured. And then the display mode for this, you can take advantage of the fact that you've collected an image and a title, and maybe even a description. Read more. So there you go. Lastly, there are somewhat fixed or static application content types. App content types are fairly static in the sense that the content and layout doesn't change, nor is it controlled by content editors, but displays dynamic content according to the needs of the specific application feature. Examples might be like a shopping cart, right? It lists products dynamically based on what a person has in their shopping cart, and is typically completely under control of the developer. However, you might give some power to content authors, allowing them to maybe in configuration set up text that goes at the top of the page. So they can configure, oops, goodness. They can configure the message, and then it gets inserted in the top of the page. But any design or layout changes are definitely going to be in control of the developer. Examples of this not just be a shopping cart. You might have a management console, data visualization tool, a search results page with faceted search, and the list goes on. What's interesting to note here is that the line between block and app page can actually blur a bit. The general idea is if the item is not to be managed as content blocks to be placed or moved around by a content editor, it should be an app page or an app block. The markup and styling are in code. By the way, what do you think I might mean by an app block? So let's going back to our shopping cart situation. We could actually have, while a person is shopping, we got products and they're shopping, and you might have the shopping cart icon over here. And when you click on that, it brings up a menu, a cool looking menu where you can see the items in your shopping cart. This is not a page, it's a block, but it's a app block. It is something that should be under control of the app developer and in development. So just throwing that out there, that might be something you come across. So there you have it, the 5 categories of content types: basic, structured, unstructured, hybrid, and app. What is crucial to the success of a solid CMS solution is that the editorial experience takes away the ability to stray from a clear, well-defined path, because we've used atoms and built from there, but that allows for creative freedom within the design style guide. So those atoms get transferred into structured pieces that collect and store information and then display it. And you've got to define what people see and do. Also, actually, no, I just covered it. Yeah, the architect and designer work with you as the stakeholder to define what users see and do. Folks, I hope you found this helpful. Thank you. All right, so that concludes the pre-discovery phase, pre-kickoff training portion of this talk. I promised some developer solutions. We're running out of time. We got 15 minutes, it looks like. So, or a little bit more than that. All right, cool. Actually, we're looking good. Let me just check the chat window here. And cool. All right. So, I skipped over some things when it came to atomic design. You have atoms, molecules. I can do this, right? Organisms. And again, the idea is that each one builds on top of the other. What isn't mentioned and has become, since Brad Frost launched atomic design, a new concept was added, was preloaded here, and I think they call it particles. And particles deal with things that you have styling underneath, under the hood that affects atoms across the board. So, for example, spacing, colors, fonts, choices that you make that affect everything up the chain. What about unstructured? So I covered display modes. I left myself a note here where I said I covered display modes. What about unstructured content? To be honest with you, I don't know what I was meaning to direct myself towards there. So I'll move on to the next thing. The next thing to keep in mind is, okay, so okay, so we talked about display modes, and we talked about how to make structured content available for content authors, and it is very restrictive in the sense that a content author can't go and change necessarily the layout of an article willy-nilly and throw things all over the place and move things around, right? We set aside unstructured landing pages or hybrid landing pages for that. So how do you make it so that a content author can insert bits onto a page, right? And how do you actually deliver this as a developer? You know, I let the stakeholders know that this is an option, but wouldn't it be cool? Come on, play nicely. It's not gonna, is it? Okay, hold on. Oh, forget it. Okay, I was gonna move that thing around and move these guys up there. So how do we give that functionality, that capability to our content editors? Well, if you go look at examples from Drupal.org, like the amazing project Umami, you'll see that they used block layout, which is very hairy, because what you end up with is, in the admin, you end up with this massive list of blocks and sections, regions, where those blocks belong to. And if you want to know where this particular block is going to show up, you got to go in and click the configure button, and it will tell you it will only show up on certain content types or certain page paths or other conditions you've got configured for that one block as it's displayed in this region. Pretty messy. Not a great user experience for content editors. It's also a just a terrible experience for developers and those who have to deal with and manage content versus configuration. Because remember, content flows down from production through to local dev, while config flows up from local dev to production. That's a really nice way to succinctly communicate content versus config. So what are the options? If block layouts is convoluted, well, what else is there? Paragraphs is a good, cool solution. When it came out, it was awesome. It basically did exactly what I was attempting to do here, which was to create essentially these structured block only things and be able to move them around, right? So there's a few caveats though to paragraphs. You end up with, if you're not careful, paragraphs within paragraphs within paragraphs. And as Hawkeye pointed out in a talk not long ago, you will end up, if you turn on revisions, you will end up with this geometric exponential growth of of node revisions and paragraph revisions in your database. So this can get pretty hairy. I don't recommend it. Drupal core has come out with Layout Builder. You've probably heard of it if you've been in Drupal for any amount of time. It is awesome sauce, but I have yet to run into somebody. Well, sorry, let me put that differently. Other than the Lullabot article that I read and the few Lullabots that I know, I've not seen anybody implementing Layout Builder out there. So it is amazing because it helps with a combination of Layout Builder from core and a couple of other contrib modules. You separate the concerns when it comes to content versus config. It's hugely cool. Let's see. So yeah, content versus config becomes less of an issue with Layout Builder. All right, I want to cover some bonus content type categories. So let me just call out some attention here. If you're involved in proposals and sales, and you found the pre-kickoff training useful, this might be something you might add to your tool belt, including those bits. You would bring these two bonus types or bonus categories up if they're a good fit for your client. The first one is microsites. Now, in my definition of a microsite, it is not the same as a multi-site instance. Okay, this is not. We're not talking about multi-site. Okay, we are talking about typically like departmental or sub-organizational sets of pages with their own sub-navigation. What am I talking about? Well, remember we had a header and a footer, right? This is the same on pretty much all pages, right? Well, this one department might have a team, a group of folks who, sorry, go ahead.
Are you drawing something? It's not showing up on the screen.
Oh, thank you for calling that out.
No worries.
Oh man. Okay. Microsite, not the same as a multi-site, and you have a header and a footer. And the idea here is that in a microsite instance, you've got team members that are all in a group that want to contribute to a very specific set of pages. So let's give them a microsite. It falls within the brand style guide. It has its own logo perhaps, and even submenu. And basically from there, it might typically be unstructured or structured content, depending on what you want to give them, or even both. Remember, you're just creating a submenu here that these guys have access to create, and they can go and use their specific content types, or even any of the available content types, depending on how you structure this microsite. Fit it into their set of pages for their group and call it a day. That's a microsite. The second bonus content type category is campaigns. This is a heavy lift. It requires serious custom development to get right. It requires senior developers to architect a solution. They should be considered for high-value clients who take marketing and automation seriously. Okay, marketing and automation. So what actually is a campaign content type? In my view, it's very similar to unstructured, but the thing that differentiates it is typically there's no header, and there's no footer. It's not the same as every other page that you look at on the site. So what are we dealing with then? It's fully unstructured, so you can have big call outs to some thing, right? Let me just put it this way. It's a brand free, so your logo is not here. Target audience centric, so the thing you've got in the images may be the very audience members you're talking to. Let's say senior citizens with smiles on their faces and little grandsons on their laps, and happy day. And it is, like I said, top to bottom, unstructured, typically tied directly to a digital marketing campaign strategy. Typically has a single call to action, and that call to action might be repeated elsewhere on the page. Now, does a campaign page have to follow this where it's top to bottom? No, you could have header or footer if you wanted. But yeah, so it can be organically searched. In other words, it'll come up in Google, but typically might be associated with a paid incoming link campaign ads. Done well, it features marketing and CRM integration. And this is the senior developer portion that I was talking about, right? That you've got Salesforce or some other CRM out there that this page is actually auto-generated from the CRM. And you might in fact have multiple versions or variations of this page, each with their own specific call to action, so that you can kind of sort of A/B test your campaign. So you might have a button here, you might have another variation, you know, a phone number. Here's a phone icon because I can draw. Hey, and that's all completely integrated. Now, how far you take this is, you know, going to be up to the budget and up to the client and up to you and your skill set. But this is my idea of a campaign page and the power you could achieve because Drupal is freaking that awesome. Yeah, so I do want to cover briefly. I've got, oh, we're doing okay. All right. I talked about in the beginning that there are some contrib shortcomings when it comes to some of the implementation details that I covered here for these things. Number one, as far as layout builder, it does seem like the skill set is out there to yet to be grabbed, yet to be achieved by a good portion of the community. So I think it would be really great if folks who are experienced with layout builder would jump in to Umami and convert Umami from doing the block layout pattern to using layout builder. And there's actually an issue ticket out there in the queue. I've subscribed to it. Unfortunately, I've not myself been able to contribute to it, but I would like to really encourage anybody who has the skills to go jump out on that and do it. It'd be really nice to see that converted. A second kind of contrib initiative, if I can call that, is components. And there might be folks in this audience who are already super familiar with components and the components, the contrib themes that really take advantage of components. I personally am a kind of a Radix guy with Radix theme, but I've seen Emulsify. I haven't played with it yet. I've seen some other Pattern Lab associated themes. There's a Bootstrap Storybook theme I'm associated with, but one of the shortcomings that I'm seeing, at least with Radix, I don't know if this is the case with other themes, is that components give you the ability to, let me actually draw this out. Components give you the ability to encapsulate your HTML or Twig in our case, your CSS or Sass in the case of Radix, and even your JavaScript, all in a single folder. And so let's say I wanted to represent a team card. And so I've got an image of my team member, their name, and maybe a short bio and a read more link. This is my component. I can create this component using the components module in a folder and expose the Twig, the Sass, and the JavaScript that are all associated specifically with this guy, with this card, and make it available to Drupal. One of the shortcomings that I've noticed though is that the Sass, Radix will compile the all of the components. You got this list of components, right, that they've provided. All the CSS files inside those components, or I'm sorry, SCSS files, are compiled by Radix and thrown into the big honkin' style.css file that's generated or built. But Drupal itself has the ability to, with libraries, you can request things like this component's style on demand, or at least I feel like that should be something it can do. You can do that in other areas. I can say, when this thing shows up on a page, grab the CSS for it, right? So I feel like this is a current shortcoming of components, or at least it is for how Radix uses it. I don't know if there are others out there that fix this. It would be really, really cool if we did have a way for components to pull in CSS or Sass files or what have you that are encapsulated in a component at runtime or at when it's needed for a specific use on a page. Third kind of contrib initiative I just want to throw out there, and my hat's off to these guys. I've tried to become active with them, but have found no time to actually contribute in any way, in any useful way. But the Config Management Initiative 2.0, config management changed the world of Drupal when it was released to Drupal 8. Really, really awesome stuff to be able to do what we do, and some of the contrib modules out there are amazing. The initiative for 2.0 initiative for Drupal 9, I think is going to change the future of Drupal. I think right now, if you were building a SaaS app, a software as a service application that was basically just a CRUD, create, read, update, delete, the go-to out there kind of in the PHP world and probably other worlds is frameworks like Laravel or Ruby on Rails, and things of that nature. And multi-tenant is not easy to do. There are some things out there to help you get there. And what I mean by multi-tenant is when you're doing software as a service, you have, Joe Schmo company and Acme widgets, both as your client, and they each need their own instance of the product. And you might do this like Salesforce did, where the entire code base is shared between both of those clients, and the separation of concerns is handled in the application layer. Your code makes sure that Joe Schmo can't see Acme stuff and vice versa. You can do multi-tenant with different databases, and you can get there. All of this is, we're so close to this with Drupal because of content management. If we can get distributions to be able to, like themes, be based off of one another and have a parent-child relationship in distributions, and then nail down some of the amazing ideas that are on the configuration management initiatives 2.0 roadmap, I think Drupal will change the face of SaaS applications that are more publishing behemoths, right? They're not just simple CRUD apps, although I think it will change the space for CRUD apps because it'll be so much more accessible because it just becomes the ability to allow Acme to not only have their own single tenant instance of your distribution and their own configuration separate from and distinct from Joe Schmo and Acme, separate and distinct from each other, where they can customize their thing. Yeah, that's game changing. But the key is, how do we allow configuration changes from upstream distribution through to downstream instances with different configurations? So that's something to consider, throw out there. I hope the community will get involved in that. That's all I have to say. Let me come back over to the chat. I'm sure there are some questions. Let's just take a look here. So, nice, Andrew. Glad to see you are using Layout Builder for new builds. It's awesome. People want to eat lunch. Thanks for pointing out that I had missed pulling up the drawing app. Oh, interesting. In regards to components, I will visit that later. Thank you for sharing, Ralph. That issue looks like it's fixed, closed. Okay, maybe a duplicate. I will look into that. Thank you, Bob. I appreciate you sharing. Totally agree on Layout Builder in Umami. Awesome. Yes, there is a few issues. I've seen them, and a few seem closed. Maybe. Yeah. Elaborate on the issue, Andrew. What do you mean? So I guess my take on getting Layout Builder into Umami is get us away from using the block layouts system to do landing pages. Like right now, the home page is using block layouts. Why aren't we using a landing page content type, an unstructured content type? Cool. And Ralph pointed out that there's been some follow-up to the link. So guys, I really appreciate you being on board and kind of sticking through this with me. I hope you find it useful, and I would really appreciate feedback on these categories.
All right, James. Yeah, it looks like you got one more question in there.
Okay, and we're just about out of time, but I will take it. It would be nice if you could look up the name of the module for placing a display mode inside of WYSIWYG field. You know what? I will do it. We got, I know somebody wants to hop on and do their session. It was Drupal insert block WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. Anybody else have to say that when they type it? Gosh, is it called insert block? That's funny. That's the thing no, it's not.
You got it, James. You got a couple minutes. It's fine. It's lunchtime, so.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. Insert a block and WYSIWYG module. Embed. It was entity embed, I think. That sound right?
I think I was in the same presentation when someone showed us that one, and I forget. Might have been from Hawkeye.
Allows entity to embed within a text area using WYSIWYG. Yep, this is it. And I'm pretty sure it allows for display. Oh, they don't talk about modes on this page, but I feel like you do have the ability to specify what display mode is what display mode is used when it's embedded in the WYSIWYG. So I hope you find that useful. I would say that out loud when I type. Okay, cool. Not alone. Good to go. All right. Got some folks on board there. Nice presentation. Oh, thanks, guys. You mentioned the design book at the beginning. That was Atomic Design by a gentleman named Brad Frost. And I can actually go back to the beginning. So the two guys I built upon actually are Brad Frost, his Atomic Design Principles. He's got a book on it. Definitely recommend it for designers and developers. And then also go check out Tyrell Bloomfield's articles on what he calls UX triage. He introduces this concept of see, do. I found it really, really helpful when thinking about and building architectures.
Thanks for the URL, Ralph.
Thank you, Ralph. Yes, for sure.
Just to add on that too, I think Atomic Design actually goes further than just web design. If you can actually apply those principles to other projects that you do even around your house, and it actually works. It's crazy.
You know,
so
really
I wanted to
Aristotle. You know, he was the one who kind of built and wrote the book on categories, taxonomies, and relationships between objects. And so,
yep.
Yeah, good stuff.
It's after I read it, definitely changed how I think about things, how I approach problems, and how I approach the solution that I'm building. Thank you so much for a wonderful presentation, James, as always.
Thank you, sir.
I wanted to make a PSA here that for those of you going by the calendar, the session schedule on the website, it says launch is up to 12:50, but we're back at 12:30 for a session about the Maintainer Support Initiative by Greg Borgs.